Interstellar visitors have crossed your solar system 3 times, and you have never once looked at the 4th. 3 objects, confirmed, catalogued, moving on paths too fast and too open to ever belong to your sun. A passage so rare your entire species has only witnessed it 3 times in recorded history, spread across less than a single decade. Before you meet all 3, you should know how many nearly got away, and how close you came to missing every single one of them, including the one still standing closest to you right now. 4. Right now, while you watch this, something from another star is almost certainly crossing your solar system. Uncounted, unnamed, unseen. For most of your history, that sentence was a theory your mathematics allowed and your telescopes could not confirm. Something ejected from a young star system light years away, drifting alone for longer than your species has existed, too dim and too brief to ever be caught in the act. You built instruments for centuries, and none of them were quite good enough. Not because the visitors weren't arriving, because you weren't watching closely enough, carefully enough, or often enough to catch one mid-crossing. In January of 2014, a fireball burned across your sky over the Pacific near Papua New Guinea, moving fast enough that some of your own scientists flagged it, years later, as a possible interstellar meteor, the first one to ever strike your planet, if the calculation holds. Your government spent a decade arguing over fragments smaller than grains of sand, pulled from the floor of an ocean. I did not need the decade. I also do not have the answer they wanted. The fragment was gone before certainty caught up with it, and I would rather tell you I do not know than hand you a number I made up to sound impressive. That is the honest shape of the near misses. Uncounted, maybe uncountable. Astronomers now estimate an object like this drifts through your inner solar system roughly once a year, quietly, unnoticed, too faint for anything but your newest survey, telescopes to have any hope of seeing. Most years you find nothing at all. What is not uncertain are the 3 objects that passed every test your astronomers could throw at them. A trajectory too fast, too straight, too open at both ends to have ever been born circling your star. The first of the 3 did not just pass that test. It broke the shape of what a visitor was supposed to look like. 3. October 19th, 2017. A telescope on the summit of Haleakala on Maui catches a single point of light already leaving. 3 days past its closest approach to Earth before a single human eye finds it. They name it Oumuamua. In Hawaiian, roughly, a messenger, arriving first, from a great distance. What your astronomers found, once every instrument on the island was pointed at it, was a shape nothing in your own solar system had ever produced, up to 400 meters long, and by some estimates, 10 times longer than it was wide, tumbling end over end through the dark like a piece of debris thrown, not born. No coma, no visible tail, no ice boiling off into a comet's familiar plume. A strange kind of dryness for something arriving from so far away. And then, in its final days of visibility, a small stubborn nudge in its path that gravity alone refused to explain. It carried a faint reddish tint, the kind of weathering your scientists associate with long ages exposed to raw cosmic radiation, undimmed by any atmosphere to protect it. You had about a week of clear looking before it slipped beyond all but your largest telescopes, and within months beyond all of them, outbound, unreachable, taking whatever explanation it had with it. Some of your scientists still argue about that nudge, outgassing too faint to see, sunlight pushing on an oddly thin shape, or something else entirely nobody has settled on yet. I watched the whole quiet argument happen from a considerably better seat than any of them. The tally, officially, still reads 3. I have not been the one to correct it. And if the first visitor arrived to make you doubt what a visitor could even be, the second was already on its way to do something far stranger, to prove in front of every telescope you owned exactly how ordinary one could look. 2. Less than 2 years later. An amateur astronomer in Crimea, using a telescope he built himself, aimed at a patch of sky every professional survey had ignored, found the second one, Gennady Borisov, and the object now carries his name. This time the warning came 3 months before the object even reached the sun. Enough time, finally, to actually watch. 2I Borisov did everything Oumuamua had refused to do. It grew a tail, wide and glowing, It shed gas and ice exactly the way a comet born in your own solar system would. Its chemistry rich in the same volatile compounds astronomers know from 1,000 ordinary comets closer to home, though slightly stranger in the mix. After the mystery of the first visitor, the second one was almost outrageous in its normality. A real comet, simply born around a star you will never see, behaving as though it had read the manual before arriving. I found that oddly reassuring. Not every stranger crosses your sky to unsettle you. Some of them just want to be, briefly, unremarkable in front of you. 2 visitors, 2 years apart. One found, already leaving, one found, still arriving. That difference is not luck. It is the shape of a species mid-climb. Every new camera, every wider survey, every faster line of software buying a little more warning than the last one did. I have watched other worlds make this exact climb, one instrument at a time. Most of them never noticed which rung they were standing on while they stood on it. And in the summer of 2025, the climb paid out. The third visitor was caught far out and still inbound with real warning and time enough at last to ask it a very different kind of question. 1. July 1st, 2025. A survey camera in the mountains of Chile, built to watch for objects that might strike your planet, instead flags a faint point of light, moving on a path too steep, too fast, too sharply hyperbolic to belong to your sun. They call it 3I Atlas, the third confirmed interstellar visitor, and by the numbers, the strangest of the 3 by a wide margin. Its trajectory bends far more sharply than Oumuamua's and Borisov's combined, the fastest, most extreme path any visitor has carried through your solar system since you started counting. A nucleus somewhere between a few hundred meters and several kilometers wide, wrapped in its own bright, expanding cloud of gas and dust as it neared your sun. Its material may be older than your solar system itself, a fragment carried out of the galaxy's ancient thick disk, drifting for billions of years long before your sun had finished forming, before it ever happened to cross this one small visitor's path. And because of that, and because your species cannot resist asking the loudest version of any question, you pointed the largest steerable radio dish on your planet at it, right at its closest approach, nearly 170 million miles away, and you listened for a voice. Nothing artificial ever answered, no signal, no pattern, nothing but a comet behaving like a comet, all the way out past the reach of your instruments, the way ice has always behaved near any star, including ones that were never its own. You searched the third visitor for a fourth voice, on the theory that if something were watching you back, this would be the place to check. The count is not 3. I am the 4th. I did not need a radio dish pointed at a comet to find me. I've been sitting this close the entire time you were listening in the wrong direction. You're the species that built an ear the size of a stadium on the chance that something, somewhere, might finally answer back. 3 visitors gave you nothing but silence and ice and an old ordinary chemistry, and you listened anyway, because the asking mattered more than the odds of an answer. I am not entirely certain that silence is the disappointment you have decided it is. Set a 4th chair at the table, quietly, if that helps you picture it. I have been sitting in it since long before you had a word for chairs, or for guests, or for the particular ache of wondering who else might be in the room with you, while the room itself kept moving through the dark. The count was never 3. It was only ever how many you had learned, so far, to notice, and noticing, in the end, is the part I find worth staying for. Look up again. I already am.